A frail-looking girl, dressed in worn-out clothes, sat alone on the cold sidewalk outside a luxurious restaurant in Los Angeles. She held a simple cardboard sign that read, "Help." To many people, she just blended in with the countless homeless people scattered across the city. Most passers-by hurried past, avoiding eye contact as if pretending she wasn't even there. But then something different happened. Keanu Reeves, the kind-hearted actor known for his generosity, stepped out of the restaurant after finishing his dinner. His mind seemed lost in thought, perhaps reflecting on the pleasant conversation he had just shared with friends inside. But something made him pause. His gaze lingered on the girl sitting silently, nearly invisible to the hurried crowd. She couldn't have been more than 12 or 13 years old, with simple, tattered clothes that told a story of hardship. She held a small, handwritten sign in her hands, her expression shifting between hope and resignation as she watched people pass by without so much as a glance. Keanu stopped abruptly, his calm demeanor contrasting with the bustling energy around him. Others hurried past, averting their eyes as if she didn't exist. But something about the girl tugged at him, stirring memories he didn't expect. He felt compelled to approach her. "Are you okay?" Keanu asked gently, crouching down so that he could look her in the eye. She looked up at him, her wide, tired eyes surprised. Her voice came out hesitant, barely audible. I just need help," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "It's really important." Keanu watched her carefully. Her face held a mix of fear and determination, and there was something about her that stirred something deep inside him, something he couldn't quite place. "What do you need the money for?" he asked gently, his tone soft but direct. The girl looked down at the ground, her eyes darting away. She stayed silent for a moment, fidgeting with the strap of her small backpack. She didn't seem ready to answer, and Keanu could tell she was struggling to find the right words. He didn't want to pressure her, but something in her quiet hesitation made him even more curious. "It's not for me," she finally admitted, still not meeting his eyes. "I don't know if I should say." Keanu's brow furrowed in concern. There was a deep sadness in her voice, something that made him lean in closer, carefully studying her expression. "Maybe I can help, if it's really that urgent," he offered softly. He wanted to help, but he didn't want to force her to say more than she was comfortable with. The girl seemed to struggle to find the right words. She took a deep breath, her shoulders rising and falling slowly. Finally, she whispered, "It's not for me, but I have to save someone. Before it's too late." Her words were so quiet that Keanu had to strain to hear them. They were simple, yet they carried a weight that was hard to ignore. His heart ached for her, wanting to understand more, to help her in whatever way he could. The street they were on was bustling, with bright lights reflecting off the wet asphalt after a brief rain, the chatter of people filling the air. But that small space between them felt like a different world, quiet and solemn. "You don't have to tell me everything," Keanu said gently, offering her a reassuring smile. "But, have you eaten today?" The girl hesitated, then slowly shook her head. Her hands were trembling slightly as she clutched the strap of her backpack. Keanu's heart ached even more. "Come on," he said softly, gesturing to a small cafe across the street. "It's too cold to stay out here. Let's get something to eat." The girl looked around, weighing her options. She seemed unsure if she could trust him, but after a few moments of silent thought, she slowly nodded and picked up her sign. With a cautious step, she followed Keanu across the street toward the cafe. Inside, Keanu chose a quiet table tucked into the corner away from the crowds. A waitress quickly came over, and Keanu ordered 2 hot drinks and some sandwiches. As they waited for the food, Keanu turned to the girl again, his voice calm and reassuring. "Did you ask anyone else for help today?" he asked softly. She sighed, fiddling with the edge of her tattered sleeve. "Nobody wants to help, they all just walk right past me." Keanu listened carefully, his heart going out to her. He understood what it felt like to be ignored, to be left out in the cold. He nodded slowly, letting her know he understood. The silence between them stretched for a few moments, broken only by the soft clinking of cutlery and the occasional murmurs of customers in the cafe. A waitress soon returned with their food, steaming sandwiches and hot drinks that warmed their hands and filled the air with the comforting aroma of fresh bread. The girl wrapped her cold fingers around her cup, slowly sipping the hot drink, soaking in the much-needed warmth. After a few bites, Keanu tried again softly, "Now that you're more comfortable, can you tell me why you need help?" The girl looked down at her plate, fiddling with the edge of her napkin. She hesitated, biting her lip before finally answering. "I just need to save someone, before it's too late." Her words left Keanu even more intrigued. He leaned forward slightly, his voice steady but curious. Save someone? Who is it? The girl averted her gaze, staring at the ground as though searching for an answer she wasn't ready to give. Her silence stretched on, heavy and telling. Keanu could see the weight in her expression. He didn't want to push her, but something about her struggle felt deep, urgent even. The cafe around them started to fill, the soft hum of conversation blending into the background. Keanu's eyes never left the girl, watching closely as she sat there, clutching her cup. "It's not easy to explain," she finally said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's someone I care about, a kitten. He's the only thing I have left from my parents." Keanu's brow furrowed in confusion. "Kitten?" She seemed too young to have this much responsibility, but he could sense that this small creature meant more to her than words could explain. Her voice trembled slightly as she continued. Before they passed away, my parents gave him to me. They said he'd always be my friend. He's the only thing that still connects me to them." Keanu's heart softened at her words. It wasn't just about food or money, it was something deeper, something more important. A connection to her family, something precious and irreplaceable. "Where is the kitten now?" he asked gently, his tone kind. The girl looked away, wiping at her eyes with the napkin Keanu had handed her. "I can't say, not yet." The mystery deepened, and Keanu couldn't help but feel a need to help this girl unravel her story. He leaned back slightly, giving her space but still watching, waiting to understand more. After a long silence, she finally spoke again. "His name is Ruby," she said softly, a small, bittersweet smile crossing her face. "He was just a tiny kitten." Keanu listened carefully, his heart aching for her. It wasn't just about a kitten, it was about love, loss, and the strength this young girl had. It was clear she wasn't just begging for help, she was fighting for something that mattered deeply to her. As they sat quietly in the cafe, Keanu thought about how much pain this girl had already experienced, yet she still had hope. She still cared about someone else, this kitten. And that gave her the strength to keep going. "I know it's hard," Keanu said gently, his voice filled with understanding. "But you're strong. Even in the darkest moments, we can find a way to move forward. Maybe you can find someone who can help you take care of Ruby." The girl nodded slowly, gripping her cup tightly. She seemed to be thinking hard, weighing her options. She looked up at Keanu with a mix of hope and doubt. "He's all I have left. He needs me," she said softly. "I promised my parents I'd take care of him." Keanu smiled kindly at her. "It sounds like you have something special, something worth fighting for. And I know that kind of love can make things a little easier." They sat in silence for a few more moments, the warmth of the cafe, the hum of the city around them. The girl, now calmer, sipped her drink, the tension between them easing slightly. Keanu reached across the table gently, offering his hand. "You're not alone in this. We'll find a way." And in that quiet moment, it felt like maybe, just maybe, they were both a little less alone. "When my parents gave Ruby to me, my mom said he was our little miracle. She told me he showed up at our doorstep on a cold night, right on my birthday. It was late and I had just come inside from playing outside. I remember hearing a soft meow, and when I opened the door, there he was, this tiny little kitten, shivering and scared. My mom knelt down beside him, gently picking him up and placing him in my hands. 'This little guy is here for a reason,' she said with a smile. 'He's your birthday miracle.' I stared at the tiny creature, his bright eyes staring up at me with curiosity. 'But, what do we do with him?' I asked, holding him close. My mom chuckled softly. 'We'll take care of him. He'll be a part of our family now.' That little kitten became more than just a pet. He was everything to me. After my parents passed away, he was the one constant thing in my life. He was always there when I cried, when I felt scared or couldn't sleep. He seemed to know exactly what I needed without me saying a word. My mom used to tell me that animals have a way of understanding us, even better than humans sometimes. And that's exactly what Ruby did for me. He comforted me when I felt so alone. One night, just after sunset, I heard a soft knock at the door. When I opened it, there he was again. Ruby, our little miracle, shivering and weak. It was cold outside and he looked so tired. My heart sank. I knew something was wrong, but I wasn't sure what to do. He had never been like this before. My mom used to always tell me that animals don't talk like we do, but they show signs when they're not feeling well. I remembered her saying that, and I quickly knelt down, gently picking Ruby up. "Oh, my little guy, what's wrong?" I whispered, brushing his soft fur. His body felt thin, much thinner than it should. He let out a weak meow, barely lifting his head. I didn't want to believe it, but it was clear something was seriously wrong. I tried feeding him some food, but he wouldn't even eat. He just lay there, barely moving, his eyes dull and lifeless. That's when I realized he's sick, and I didn't know what to do. The next morning I told my uncle about Ruby. My heart raced as I explained that he wasn't eating, that he could barely move. My uncle listened, his expression serious, but then he sighed. "I'm sorry, kid, but I can't keep him. It's already hard enough having you in the house. A cat? That's just another burden." His voice was firm, and for a moment I thought maybe he was joking, but I could see the truth in his eyes. Tears started to sting my eyes. "But he's my family. I can't just let him go." My uncle shook his head. "You'll have to figure something out. I'm sorry, but I can't help you with this." And just like that, he turned and walked away. I knew I couldn't let Ruby suffer. I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. My heart clenched as I made a decision. I had to run away and find help. I couldn't stay where I was. Ruby was all I had left of my parents, and I couldn't let anything happen to him. I hid him in a safe spot, behind some boxes and old blankets where no one would find him. I wrapped him in a small towel and gently placed him in a basket. I prayed he would be okay, but it didn't feel like enough. He wasn't moving much, barely even opening his eyes. I remembered my mom's words, how she used to talk about animals and how they show signs when they're in trouble. My mom had been a vet, and she taught me to always watch out for these signs. She would say, "Animals don't always tell us what's wrong, but you'll notice when something's wrong if you pay close enough attention." I thought back to that. Ruby wasn't just sleepy, he was weak. His fur looked dull, and I could tell his stomach was bloated. My mom had once told me about obstructions in animals, how they could eat something they shouldn't, like a piece of plastic or string, and it could cause serious problems. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I had a feeling that's what Ruby might have. But now I was completely alone. My mom wasn't here to help me. I had no idea what to do next. I couldn't save Ruby on my own. I felt lost, hopeless. I could still hear her voice in my head, though, telling me that I had to keep trying, that giving up wasn't an option. And then I met Keanu. I had been sitting by the alley, my head in my hands, feeling helpless, when Keanu walked by. He saw me sitting there and came over, his face kind and gentle. He asked me what was wrong, and at first I didn't want to tell him. But then I couldn't hold it in anymore. I spilled everything. The story about Ruby, how he showed up at our doorstep on my birthday, how he was all I had left of my parents. I told him how I ran away because my uncle couldn't keep him, and now I didn't know what to do because Ruby was sick and I couldn't afford a vet. Keanu listened carefully. His eyes softened, and I could see he truly cared. "We'll find Ruby," he said softly, "and we'll help him. You don't have to do this alone." I felt a little spark of hope for the first time in what felt like forever. But then I swallowed hard. "He's in a safe place, but he's sick, Keanu. He won't eat and he can't move. I don't know what to do." Keanu nodded. "We'll get him help. But first we need to find him." He took me by the hand and led me to a nearby alley. Together we moved some boxes and blankets, and there, inside a small basket, I saw Ruby, just like I had left him, curled up and weak. But this time Keanu could see it too. He could see how thin Ruby was, how fragile. Keanu knelt down next to the basket. "He's very weak," he said gently. "We need to get him to a vet right away." My heart raced. "But I don't have money for the vet," I said, my voice shaking. "I can't afford it." Keanu looked at me with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about that. I'll take care of it. What matters now is getting Ruby the help he needs." I let out a relieved breath, feeling like maybe things would be okay. Together, we carefully lifted Ruby into the basket, cradling him as gently as we could. We rushed to catch a taxi to the nearest veterinary clinic. At the clinic, a kind receptionist welcomed us. Keanu explained the situation quickly, and Ruby was taken away to an examination room. The minutes felt like hours as we waited in the lobby. I couldn't sit still. I kept pacing back and forth, my eyes fixed on the door, wondering what was happening to Ruby behind it. Finally, the vet came out. His face was serious. "Ruby's very weak," he said. "He needs surgery to remove what's blocking his digestive system. It's a delicate and expensive procedure. If it's not done, he won't survive." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I couldn't lose Ruby. He was all I had left of my parents. "You'll save him, right?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The vet gave me a compassionate look. "We'll do everything we can." Tears filled my eyes as I looked at Keanu. "What do we do now?" I whispered. Keanu placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "We're going to do the surgery. Don't worry about the cost. I'll take care of it." Hope flickered in my chest again, but it was mingled with fear. Ruby's life was in their hands now. We had no guarantees. After a while, the vet returned. "The surgery was successful," he announced. "We removed the object blocking Ruby's digestive system. Now, he just needs rest and care for the next 24 hours to recover. A huge wave of relief washed over me. I covered my face with my hands and sobbed, tears of gratitude streaming down my cheeks. Will he be okay? I asked, my voice trembling. The vet smiled gently. We're confident he'll improve, but he'll need a lot of care. Keanu smiled, leaning down to meet my eyes. That means Ruby is on the road to coming home with you. She hugged him suddenly, her heart full of thanks. Even though Ruby's surgery had been successful, his recovery was still uncertain, and the coming days would be very important. Meanwhile, Keanu started to realize that helping the girl was more than just a mission. He couldn't ignore the special bond forming between them. That night, the girl could barely sleep, even after hearing that Ruby had survived the surgery. The worry about his recovery kept her restless. Keanu stayed close, sitting beside her, offering silent comfort. Just having him nearby made her feel a little less alone. The next morning, they went back to the vet clinic to check on Ruby. The air there still felt tense, but there was a small hint of hope. The vet greeted them with a smile. Ruby is doing well, she said. He's still weak, but we can already see some signs of improvement. You can see him now, but remember, he needs lots of rest. The girl nodded quickly, excited to see Ruby. Keanu followed her as the vet led them to a small room where Ruby was resting. As they walked in, she approached the cage slowly, afraid of waking him. Ruby lay on a soft blanket, his eyes half open. He let out a soft meow as she knelt beside him, reaching out to gently stroke his head. Hey buddy, she whispered, her voice shaking. You're so strong. I'm here now. Keanu watched quietly, feeling a mix of emotions. This moment wasn't just a simple reunion, it was something much deeper. Ruby wasn't just a pet. He was something the girl had lost, and now he gave her hope again. Animals like Ruby can feel when they're surrounded by love, the vet said with a smile. The girl stayed by Ruby's side for a long time, speaking to him softly. Keanu sat nearby, watching her with admiration. Despite everything she had been through, she still had the strength to show love and care. When they finally left the clinic, the vet explained Ruby would need special care, food, medicine, and a calm place to rest. The girl looked relieved, but then her face quickly turned worried. I don't know if my uncle will let Ruby come home with me, she said softly. Keanu frowned, feeling the weight of the situation. Don't worry, he said firmly. We'll find a solution. You're not alone. She looked up at him, her eyes shining with gratitude. Trusting someone was still hard for her, but Keanu was determined not to let her down. We'll take care of Ruby together, he promised, and we'll take care of you too. Even though Ruby was safe now, the uncertainty of where he would stay and the difficult situation the girl lived in made things complicated. Keanu started thinking of ways to help her more permanently. As the sun began to set, they left the vet clinic. The girl held a small package of Ruby's medicine, her hands shaking slightly. Do you think we can stay together? She asked hesitantly. My uncle won't let me. Keanu stopped and looked at her. I promise I'll help you and Ruby, he said calmly. And I'll keep that promise. She bit her lip, her voice soft. But where would I go? I have nowhere else to go, and my uncle only lets me stay because he feels like he has to. Keanu took a deep breath. First, let's make sure Ruby is safe. Then we'll find a place where you can be happy. Trust me. He pulled out his phone and made a call. I know some people who can help, he explained. Later, they told her about programs where she could learn how to care for animals just like her mom did. Her eyes lit up. Do you think I could become a vet like my mom? Yes, Keanu smiled. You just need a chance and we'll make that happen. The next day, they picked up Ruby and moved to a temporary home arranged by the organization Keanu contacted. The cozy house felt safe and comforting for both the girl and Ruby. As she stood quietly, holding Ruby in her arms, she whispered, I never thought anyone would do this for me. Keanu smiled gently. You've already done so much just by being yourself. For the first time in a long time, she smiled, a shy but real smile. Keanu felt a deep sense of fulfillment, realizing that sometimes a small act of kindness can change a whole life. A few months later, Keanu received a letter from the girl. She told him that Ruby was healthy, and she was now involved in animal care activities. Thank you for showing me there are still good people in the world, she wrote. You gave me a chance when no one else believed in me. I'll never forget that. Keanu folded the letter, feeling deeply fulfilled. Sometimes a small gesture can change not just one life but many. He wrote in his journal, in return, our own lives change for the better. If you enjoyed this story, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories. I'll see you in the next video.